a journey that will take you to the deepest mysteries of time. Okay, welcome in everyone. I'm genuinely so excited we're diving into this today. We're going to unpack an absolute giant of a historical and theological narrative. We're basically taking this massive, sweeping chronological epic and breaking it down into clear, easy-to-grasp insights right from our source text. Let's get right into it.
So throughout this explainer, we're taking an objective look at this truly epic journey, derived directly from the text itself, the biblical epic, a chronicle of promise and deliverance. We're really looking at this ancient text as a foundational, historical, and thematic document, pulling the specific details, the names, the hard numbers, right from the source to wrap our heads around the profound story it's telling.
To keep us on track, here's our literal map for today. We'll be hitting 5 major eras: creation and first sin, Noah's Ark and the flood, Abraham to Joseph, Egyptian slavery and Moses, and finally, the freedom and wilderness journey.
Now, this entire vast history, it's really anchored by 5 key figures: Adam, Noah, Abraham, Joseph, and Moses. And why does that matter? Well, if you look closely, their biographies drive this recurring thematic cycle in the text. It's basically a constant loop of human failure followed by divine rescue. Grasping these 5 pillars is literally the key to unlocking the whole epic.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Creation and the First Sin.
So, the source describes an infinite God taking a dark void and just bringing total order to it. We're talking forming light, making nature bloom, and ultimately shaping humanity right out of the dust. But man, notice the stark contrast that follows almost immediately. The absolute perfection, the innocence of Eden is completely shattered by just one choice. A fallen angel, taking the form of a serpent, deceives them into eating this forbidden fruit. With literally one lie and one bite, that innocence is gone. Fear, shame, and mortality crash right into the human experience.
And the text shows us exactly how fast that corruption spreads. The very first sin rapidly spirals into the very first murder. Just look at the stark difference between the 2 brothers here. Abel brings this faithful offering, his best lamb, and it's accepted. But Cain's improper crop offering, it really reveals a dark heart. And what happens next? Well, Cain's jealousy completely consumes him, and he actually kills his brother out in a field. When God questions him, Cain arrogantly shoots back, "Am I my brother's keeper?" It's a tragedy that sets a really dark tone for all the generations that follow.
Which brings us right to our second era, Noah's Ark and the flood.
The source text describes a world where human wickedness just hits an absolute peak. The earth is literally filled with violence, and this prompts a massive, drastic, divine intervention. Just look at this number, 150. That's 150 straight days that devastating floodwaters covered the entire earth. It's meant to emphasize the sheer, staggering scale of this judgment. Literally everything that drew breath perished. Well, except for one family. Noah, who the text calls a righteous man, was instructed to build this massive ark. So it's just Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. 8 people in total, along with the animals, surviving to hit the restart button on humanity.
Now let's fast forward through the generations that repopulate the earth. That brings us to Section 3, from Abraham to Joseph.
Here, the narrative shifts over to Mesopotamia, and God initiates this incredibly specific, targeted plan to create a chosen nation. Let's walk through the timeline of the man chosen to kick this off, Abraham. At age 75, he shows just immense faith. He leaves his homeland for an unknown destination, banking entirely on a divine promise. Then at 99, God renames him from Abram to Abraham, which means father of a multitude. And get this, at age 100, he and his 90-year-old wife Sarah have a miracle baby, Isaac. But the ultimate test comes years later. Abraham is actually commanded to sacrifice Isaac on Mount Moriah. He shows unwavering obedience, and right at the last possible second, an angel stops him and provides a ram instead. That radical faith, that's what establishes him as the ultimate patriarch. Now this brings us to a fascinating turning point for the family line. Consider the profound meaning behind this name, Israel. It literally translates to one who wrestles with God. This is a huge deal in the text. Abraham's grandson Jacob gets into a literal physical wrestling match with a divine messenger all through the night. He absolutely refuses to let go until he gets a blessing. And because of this intense personal struggle, his name is changed from Jacob to Israel. Think about that. This single name goes on to define an entire civilization.
And that civilization starts right here. Jacob, who is now Israel, has 12 sons: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. These aren't just characters in a story, right? They are the literal foundational pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel.
you can see the family actively expanding into a nation.
But, family dynamics are messy, and the source text definitely doesn't shy away from that. Joseph, the clear favorite, breeds some incredibly toxic jealousy among his older brothers. So much so, they betray him and literally sell him into slavery down in Egypt. It looks like a tragic end, right? Actually, hold on, it's a massive plot twist. Through this wild, dramatic sequence of events in an Egyptian prison, Joseph ends up interpreting Pharaoh's dreams, predicting 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of brutal famine. Pharaoh is so impressed, he promotes Joseph all the way to prime minister. The incredible irony here is that the brothers' horrible betrayal inadvertently puts Joseph in the exact position of power needed to save his entire 70-person family from starving to death.
So, that family of 70 settles safely in Egypt. But time changes everything, which brings us to Era 4, Egyptian slavery and Moses.
The data here reveals an absolutely stark contrast. Over 4 centuries, that original family of 70 honored guests just explodes into a marginalized population of roughly 2 million people. To put that into perspective, a brand new pharaoh is absolutely terrified by their sheer numbers and systematically strips away their rights. Their status plummets to brutalized, backbreaking slaves. The oppression gets so severe, Pharaoh actually orders their newborn boys to be thrown into the Nile River. We're watching the Promised Nation get pushed to the absolute brink of annihilation.
And right out of that dark, horrific edict, a reluctant hero emerges. To save her baby from the river decree, a mother puts him in a basket on the Nile. He's actually found by Pharaoh's daughter and grows up in Egyptian royalty. His name is Moses. But his life gets completely fractured. After killing an Egyptian who is beating an Israelite, Moses has to flee into exile in Midian. He spends 40 quiet, unremarkable years out there as a shepherd. But then, at Mount Horeb, he sees this bush. It's on fire, but it's not burning up. From that fire, God calls him to head back to Egypt and demand freedom for his people. So Moses goes back, but Pharaoh arrogantly refuses to let 2 million slaves just walk away. What follows is this systematic, total dismantling of Egypt's power. The text outlines 10 escalating plagues. We're talking water turning to blood, suffocating swarms of frogs, lice, and flies, livestock dying off, boils, apocalyptic hail, locusts, and 3 days of pitch-black darkness. But it's the 10th and final plague that finally breaks Pharaoh. The death of the firstborn. The Israelites are only spared because they follow the Passover rule, putting the blood of a lamb on their doorposts so the angel of death literally passes over their homes. After that, Pharaoh finally surrenders.
This momentous liberation launches us into our 5th and final historical chapter, freedom and the wilderness journey.
The 2 million Israelites march out, right? But wait. Pharaoh changes his mind. He chases them down with 600 chariots, completely trapping the Israelites right at the edge of the Red Sea. Talk about ultimate tension. In that exact moment, Moses is commanded to raise his staff. The text describes this miraculous east wind that literally parts the waters, making a dry path for the entire nation to cross. Once they're safe, the sea completely collapses onto the pursuing Egyptian army, drowning the threat for good. It is the epic, ultimate deliverance.
Now that they're free, this massive population really needs some structure. So, at Mount Sinai, they receive the law. Look at how the famous 10 Commandments are divided up here. While 40% focus strictly on their vertical relationship with God, the majority, 60%, actually focus on their horizontal relationship with humanity. It lays out exactly how they are supposed to treat one another. It's basically a clear, ethical blueprint for building a functioning, moral society from scratch.
Okay, so they have the law, they have their freedom, and they finally arrive right at the edge of the Promised Land. But that cycle of human failing we talked about, it comes roaring back. They send 12 spies into Canaan, and the fallout is disastrous. 10 of them come back absolutely terrified of giants and fortified cities. Their fear spreads a massive panic and sparks a total rebellion among the 2 million people. Only 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, stand firm in their faith, telling everyone God is with us. But sadly, their faith is completely ignored by the terrified, panicking majority.
And the consequence for that rebellion is incredibly severe. Look at this stark number, 40. Because they flat out refused to trust the God who had literally just parted the Red Sea for them, a divine decree is handed down. That entire, doubting, rebellious generation must wander the harsh wilderness for 40 years. That's 1 year for every day the spies scouted the land. They're told they will die out there in the desert, and only their children, the next generation, will actually get to enter the Promised Land.
Fast forward those 40 years. The wandering is finally over, and the new generation is ready to go in. But what about their leader? At 120 years old,
Moses ascends Mount Nebo. He's granted this incredible, sweeping view of the Promised Land, but he's told he cannot enter it himself. And right there, just at the edge of the destination he spent his entire life striving toward, Moses dies. He passes the torch of leadership over to Joshua, bringing his journey to a close as Israel's greatest prophet.
We have covered thousands of years of narrative today, going all the way from the absolute perfection of Eden right to the dusty edge of the Promised Land. And we've seen a really clear pattern emerge from the source text. So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Throughout this massive, epic history of rebellion and rescue, does the cycle of human failing and divine deliverance ever truly end? Or is it simply a timeless reflection of the human condition itself? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.